Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our podcast. My name is Chris.
And my name is James.
And we are the Formula One Bros.
Just two twins with a love of F1 to share our thoughts on everything in the world of Formula One.
Yep, and F1 is back in our territory for once again for the second time this year, back in the official U.S. Grand Prix in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
If you remember back, the Miami Grand Prix was not the U.S. Grand Prix; it was the Miami Grand Prix, and so this one is the official marker for the U.S. Grand Prix.
USGP. Yep.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it.
Before we get into it, I will say we were planning on going, but things came up when we bought our tickets. I, for one, had not bought a house, so therefore, we were not able to go because of scheduling things. Chris was not in his current job that he's in now. I had not bought a house. So Chris' work schedule got in the way, and then I just didn't have enough money to purchase plane tickets after buying a house. So unfortunately, we could not go, but we are still planning on going to future Formula One races. So, but yes, with that, let us get into the race this week in the U.S. I'll give some of our race takeaways, and I'll start off by saying it was a pretty entertaining race. It was a pretty good race.
Yeah, I think in the past couple of years, some of the races in Austin have not been as exciting. I think just because the track characteristics, it's another Tilke track like we have with Abu Dhabi,
and overtaking,
and Sochi and other things. It's not really good for overtaking, or there's a couple, purpose-built overtaking locations after some long straightaways and DRS zones, but nothing other than that. And this one was really exciting. We got some great racing. We got some, great side-by-side action, tons of overtaking. And I think for me, that just goes back to what we've been saying all year since the beginning of 2022, that these regulations are working as intended, and it's created great racing.
I remember last year there were a couple of times where drivers would get close, racing really close, and then the driver behind would have to back off because their car just couldn't handle driving so close to another car. But in this case, like, that wasn't happening. Drivers were able to race a lot closer, and that's partly why we got a lot of really, really great overtakes. Like Charles was making some great overtakes.
The battle between Max and Lewis at the very end was incredible.
A great battle, great racing. Seb making awesome racing with Magnussen at the very end. It was some pretty darn nice racing, which was nice to see on a track that doesn't really produce a lot of great racing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just because, these, also with the tires being low profile or lower profile, they're not, and these tight, twisty sections in sector 1 and sector 3, they're not losing, or they're not over, the tires aren't overheating. You're not caught up in as much turbulent air. So you're just able to follow closer, and it creates a lot more opportunity for overtaking. So I think this was one of the more exciting U.S. Grand Prix that we've had in a while, certainly since the COTA era. I remember Indianapolis always put up some great races, but we're very lucky. And it was the 10th anniversary of Circuit of the Americas, which started back in 2012.
Which Lewis Hamilton won that race.
Yes. McLaren.
Yes, he was racing for McLaren. Yeah, I think that's McLaren's only win at the track. Because 2013 it was Red Bull with Sebastian Vettel. 2014 it was a Mercedes.
I think it was Lewis.
2015 was Nico. 2016 I believe was Lewis. 17 Lewis. 18 was Kimi. 19 was
Lewis.
2020 was Matt.
We didn't race in 2020.
Oh, we didn't race in 2020. That's right, because America was bad with their COVID. 2021 was Max, and then this year was Max again. So he's the first. That's a lie. First repeat winner for Red Bull.
Yes. I think one of my biggest takeaways is despite how different the race was and the regulations were, it was the same sort of thing, coming down to the last second with, first place chasing second place, and you had the closing laps just crescendoing in intensity. I like that whole section, the whole last like probably 15 laps. I was like, this is deja vu from last year, and it was awesome. It created some great drama. You had a great battle between Charles and Checo and George in the mix, and a battle for that last podium spot. And Max Verstappen pulled it off despite his team making it incredibly difficult for him. And for me, that just proves that Max Verstappen 100%. Is 100%. the best driver this year on the grid. I think.
Oh yeah, 100%. I totally agree.
If you could surmise his season in one segment, it would be having an 11-second pit stop and still winning.
Yeah. And really, like, it was looking at some point like the top 4 plus Sebastian Vettel could have won that race. Mm-hmm. So it was a really, really awesome race. One of the big things that I want to talk about, obviously, that I think everyone's been talking about, Lance Stroll. Oh my gosh. That he ended up getting, he got penalized with a 3-place grid penalty for that. Well, for those who didn't watch the race, he was involved in an incident with Fernando Alonso. It was right after the safety car. It was like 1 or 2 laps after the first safety car came in. And Fernando Alonso was in the slipstream coming up behind Lance Stroll. Fernando Alonso moved to the left to try and pass him. And just at the last second, Lance Stroll swerved left and ran into Fernando Alonso. Fernando's car launched up onto 2 wheels. And then Lance Stroll went spinning into the wall. That was probably the most boneheaded, like, just silly maneuver that I've seen in Formula. And it's funny too, because Lance Stroll to me is one of those drivers where I so badly want to give him so much praise, because he's not a bad driver. He's not. Like, he's had some really, really incredible like qualifying performances, especially, think back to Turkey in 2020 when he put that car on pole. He qualifies really well. He's gotten into Q3 a couple of times. He's gotten, points finishes for Aston Martin this year, but he just does stupid things like swerving in front of Fernando Alonso and causing an accident that, had it happened a couple meters beforehand, could have turned very differently than Fernando just going up on 2 wheels and being able to still finish the race. It could have ended very badly with the positioning on the track. And I so badly want to give him the credit that I feel like he deserves, but then he does stupid things like this. And it's just like, oh God, come on, man.
Yeah, it was pretty much frustrating. It was pretty much carbon copy from him and Nicholas Latifi in Australia this year during qualifying. Just what and actually I was watching the onboard and so this crash, I mean, the first thing that I thought of was how did Fernando's car not flip over, like flip backwards? Thinking Mark Webber in Valencia in 2010. I thought it was going to end up being something like that. Yeah. But Fernando Alonso, this is the incredible thing. If you watch the onboard, as soon as he goes airborne, he slams on the brakes, and that keeps the tires from rotating. Mm-hmm. And because at COTA, there's a lot of twisty bits, you need a little bit more rear braking just to help control the rotation through like the third sector is really important. So it's pretty much stops the rotation of the rear tires. And that is what keeps the car on the ground. The friction caused by the rear tires is what smart. Keeps the car attached to the track, especially considering they were going down the backstretch at 150, 170 miles an hour. that could have been very, very dangerous, and very
he,
much like Dario Franchitti in Michigan in 2007, if you remember that.
Yeah, very, very smart thinking on Fernando's part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other than that, it was a really great race. It was great to see Fernando finish.
Yeah.
Especially finish where he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was really good. There are a lot of really great storylines that we had, and then also Sebastian Vettel leading the race, and finishing 8th,
which I wanted never to end.
Yeah, I know.
I had never in my life had I wanted rain to come and for the FIA to be wimps and not put on wet tires and cancel the race. But
I know.
I have to say, I think it was really nice that Ferrari finally had some luck go their way for once.
Know.
I mean, aside from
Carlos,
Sainz,
they actually had a really good strategy.
Charles caught the safety car at exactly the right time, at exactly the right place on track, and they called him in. They pitted him for hard tires, like they caught everything, and that I think he would have finished on the podium regardless of that. But that gaining that pit stop back through the safety car put him in a position to be competitive for. At one point I thought he, with fresh tires, I thought he was going to be able to take it to Lewis Hamilton, but Hamilton was driving like a madman. So,
oh my gosh, he was driving like a man possessed.
So I think Charles would have finished on the podium, but that definitely helped. And so Ferrari finally had a little bit of luck go their way, but it just wasn't enough.
Finally made some smart decisions with their strategy.
Yep.
And, honestly, with the fact that they were competitive towards the end and Charles had started 12th, I think had Charles not gotten that penalty and he started in like the top 3, I think he very well could have won that race. But you know what? Starting 12th and finishing 3rd. Hats off to Charles and to the Ferrari gang.
I'm not entirely sure he would have been competitive for the win. That Ferrari is so quick over one lap, but at a track that is as bumpy as Coda, that has as heavy braking zones as Coda, it's a lot like Miami. And I just think that this car, the Ferrari car, really ever since 2019 or the end of 2018, has just this baked in tire wear problem that it just chews through tires way more than anything else, and they can't keep the tires up and they can't be competitive, especially at the ends of stints. Just can't happen. And for whatever reason, Mercedes and Red Bull have figured it out, and they've had it figured out for a while. That even though Ferrari is fastest in one lap, the tires are gone by lap 5 and they can't be competitive. So I think personally that 3rd place was probably the best that Charles could have done.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
And I will, and with that being said, even though Carlos started on pole, I think Max still would have won.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, Max has been driving like a man possessed, and also Max equaled the 13 race wins in a season at the U.S. race. So he is now equaled.
It's Sebastian Vettel and Michael
Schumacher. He's equaled that record, and honestly, with 3 races left, there's no reason he can't break it.
Yeah. I'm curious about that stat though. I haven't done the math, but I think it would be even more interesting if you take, some of the more dominant seasons, like, Sebastian Vettel in 2013 or Michael Schumacher in 2002 or 2004. I'd be more interested in taking a percentage of the races entered, because we've added so many races to the calendar. There are 10 more races in the calendar, almost 10 more races now than there were. So I'd be almost more curious to see what the percentage of that is.
Let's see what Michael Schumacher in 2004 won 13 out of 18 races. Sebastian Vettel won 13 out of 19 races. And so far, Max has won 13 out of 22 races. So technically, percentage-wise, Michael Schumacher's is the more impressive one. But regardless of that fact, winning 13 races in a season, period, is still very impressive.
And honestly, even on a percentage standpoint, I think Max could come close to beating that this year.
I mean,
Mexico is a track that we know Red Bull are going to go well because it has that long straight.
Max is great at Brazil
and
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, and Abu Dhabi is again, it's going to be Abu Dhabi is another track that Ferrari is going to struggle at because of the tire wear problem. I think the only track that Ferrari has a shot at for the remainder of the year is Brazil.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, all right. Shall we go to our biggest losers of the week? So, biggest losers. I'm going to start off. Carlos.
Yeah.
They had a prime opportunity. Again, I also agree. I don't think he would have won that race. But I think he could have had a shot at the podium or, or finishing in the top 5 at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, granted, it wasn't his fault. It was 100% not his fault. I think, you look it from George's perspective, it looks like it was Carlos's fault. But then you look at Carlos's perspective, he had to swerve to avoid running into the back of Max. So it was 100% not Carlos's fault. That's my opinion.
And that was the way that the stewards judged it, and rightly so.
But yeah, really, really unfortunate for him.
Yeah.
So he's definitely one of the big losers of the week.
Yeah, I think, you have to mention Carlos. I think you have to mention Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
I just, that race was painful. And I feel bad because like America, and especially the city of Austin and Texas, is like his favorite place in the world. And so I can't imagine what that must be like, going to your favorite place in the world and just being absolutely miserable at your, while doing your job, so I just, that one hurt, I think, and he's very well aware of what that looks like in the media pen. He was very, very honest with his statements. So it just hurts to see because he has such a radiant smile and there was none to be had. So rough day at the office for Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah. I've already talked about this, but I'm also going to put Lance Stroll in there. I mean, I don't need to talk about it more, but Lance Stroll definitely belongs on that list as well.
Yeah, and it was completely his fault. Just I feel bad. I think another big loser, Mick Schumacher, just didn't really get a whole lot out of the strategy, especially considering his teammate Kevin Magnussen finished 8th, which I think is definitely one of the top performers of the day by far. Was able to make the one stop strategy work. And I just think that, Mick kind of got screwed by his strategy. They didn't get the safety cars right, or the safety car in the VSC right. They just, it didn't happen. I feel also bad for, I think another big loser has to be Valtteri Bottas, binning it after turn 19. Just, completely on his own. It was windy. It was really, really windy. And the Alfa Romeo has been relatively wind sensitive and has had a challenging rear end. So, just completely unavoidable, and, lost the rear end of the car and beached it. So definitely missed opportunity because, the Alfa Romeo is, though unreliable, is quick. So definitely missed opportunity there for Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah. Yep. Well, those are all my biggest losers. Do you have any more to throw in to the pot?
No, I mean, a perennial biggest loser is Nicholas Latifi, because he's, compared to Alec, he finished 17th, and he was over 20 seconds behind his teammate, Alex Albon.
Oh, yeah. So, that was yikes.
Yeah. So just, and at the hands of Alex Albon, the Williams has been, when it's good, it's good. but it's inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Alex Albon has done the perfect job this year of stepping into George Russell's shoes, being the person that could take it to the max when it counts and when it's possible. And Nicholas Latifi just hasn't been able to do that, especially considering this is his third year in the team and he's gotten eclipsed by his teammate to the max. So,
yeah, I agree. Well, we can move on. Our next topic, we're going to go to our top performer. Now, in the past with this, we've had a couple, but this week we're going to change it. We're just picking one. So each of us have picked one top performer for the week. And it was tough to pick these. It was really, really tough to pick these. So Chris can start us off with our top performer of the week. So Chris, who is your top performer of the week?
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from, but I think I have to give it to Fernando Alonso. His ultimate classification of 15th does not, I think, accurately do justice what he did. We already talked about in the accident, he was literally like 1,000 IQ to get the car stopped and on the ground and keep it out of the wall. Miraculously, I thought when I saw that, I thought there was at least going to be some suspension damage. Nothing. He was able to keep going and, went in, changed the front wing and, went out and drove that car to 7th place. Mm-hmm. It reminded me a lot of Baku 2018 when he got the double puncture on the opening lap and was missing probably about 30 points of downforce and drove it to 7th place in Baku. Exact same thing. And just a monumental drive from him. And he was able, and if you saw there are pictures floating around social media of him just slumped over on his front tire after the race, just completely overtaken by how physical that was. And I just don't think that, that 15th place classification did him justice. And I have to say, because this is not going to be one of my hot takes because I don't think it is a very hot take. I think it's a very lukewarm take, but in the moment, a penalty like he got. So after the race, it was protested that there was damage. I think it was Haas protested that there was too much damage on his car to continue. And the car was found illegal and he was given a 30-second time penalty or something?
Yeah,
ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And so my take is obviously if that's in the regulations, then that needs to be penalized. But that needs to be an in the moment decision. That needs to be when they came in and brought that car in, that needed to be assessed. And even if he had been allowed to go out under the safety car, they should have checked that car at some point. They have entirely too much technology, telemetry, imagery, everything to allow that car continue if it truly was outside of the regulations. And
I totally agree.
If you're not going to penalize them during the race, then don't penalize them. Yeah. And I think that just goes back to an overarching inconsistency that we've had with officiating this year.
Yeah. In my opinion, the only time it would be necessary to penalize someone after the race is if something came about after the race. Like it was found out that after the race, something happened. But yeah, something like the car being damaged in the race and can't continue, that I agree. I kind of feel that should be assessed in the moment.
And to add insult to injury, the car passed scrutineering after the race.
That makes no sense.
So, if the car is going to pass scrutineering, that should be the end of it. That should have been the end of it. Yeah. So I just, and we can go on and all day. I think I will end it with Fernando Alonso was absolutely deserving of the praise that he has gotten. An amazing performance, and the FIA completely screwed him. I understand if that's in the regulations, penalize him, but don't pass him in scrutineering or don't allow him to continue to the end of the race and then penalize him just because another team protested the result. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. All right. Well, I will give my top performer of the week. And gosh, it was tough. It was tough. And we were talking before we started recording.
So many great performances.
I couldn't decide. I was trying to decide between Charles Leclerc going from 12th to 3rd or Sebastian Vettel. But I have settled. I think my top performer, I'm going to give a love to a childhood hero of mine, Sebastian Vettel. I think my top performer this week for this race is Sebastian Vettel.
And driver of the day.
And he was driver of the day, yes. Oh my gosh, he drove the wheels off that thing. At one point was leading the race and had some really, really great overtaking, especially at the end, like that last lap move over just the last lap battle that he had with Kevin Magnussen. And
so good.
At the end of the race, Kevin Magnussen, he gave all the praise in the world to Seb and even said, that's something that's a lesson that I'm going to treasure is what he said, or something along those lines. And oh my gosh, seeing him cross the finish line overjoyed over the radio like that is something that we haven't seen a whole lot of in Sebastian Vettel in recent seasons. And oh my gosh, it was just so it was so nice to see.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm legitimately going to cry. But it's going to be very, very heartbreaking to say goodbye to Seb at the end of the season.
I agree.
For someone like me who, as a diehard Ferrari fan and have been since the beginning, I put my Ferrari fandom on hold when he was racing at Red Bull. I was 100% drinking the Sebastian Vettel Red Bull double world champion Kool-Aid. Man, gosh, it's going to be sad.
Yeah. And it's quadruple world champion. You said double world champion.
Oh, well, 4-time double world champion.
Yes. So I have the quote pulled up here from Kevin Magnussen. He said, "That was some of the best racing I've ever been involved in. The way he drove was just incredible. It's almost like I feel privileged to be able to race against someone like that. It's great. And I'm going to take that lesson and treasure it." Mm-hmm. And just like, and it's specifically just watching them side by side through turn 18, that long forward, like quadruple apex right-hander, just like that's impossible. And it was so cool. Yeah. So I totally agree. Totally deserving of being a top performer of the week and just, incredible. Sebastian Vettel, man.
Yep.
Don't leave us, please.
Oh, I know. All right. So that's our top performers of the week. So with that, we are going to go to our hot takes of the week. Lots of hot takes going on. Chris, would you like to start us off? What is your hot take for the week?
I know earlier that I said I felt bad for Daniel Ricciardo, but that was more specifically in reference to the US Grand Prix and him being USA kind of feels like a home race for him, even though he's from Australia. Like, he, if there's anyone, that is like super duper about like, he's the most American person on the grid right now. So, he loves America. America loves Daniel Ricciardo. So specifically with the US race, I felt bad that, he wasn't able to give a good performance, but just in general, on the whole, this season and last season, I don't necessarily feel bad for him in the position that he's found himself in. Obviously, like I am a huge person for like, I'm a huge advocate for mental health, and it does not look like Daniel Ricciardo is having a good time at all. And, my heart breaks for him. It really does. But, as someone that, for myself as a musician, I say this all the time that, you're only as good as your last performance. And, the results speak for themselves. You have to rely on results. You can't rely on pedigree or resume or anything. And, he's a multiple Grand Prix winner. He dethroned Sebastian Vettel at Red Bull. Like, he's been an amazing driver, and he is an amazing driver.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily feel bad for him for the position that he's found himself in, just unable to get what is out of the car. And I don't agree with the takes that I've seen on social media that McLaren like wronged him or did something bad to him. I don't think that is the case. I think he did it to himself. He hasn't been able to adjust. And I think that's a little bit who he is as a driver. He drives on instinct. He drives on feeling. And when he feels like he has a good car under him that he's confident and he can lean on and he can push, like we saw with him at Red Bull, he's unstoppable and he makes the craziest overtakes I've literally ever seen. But it just can't get out what he needs out of the McLaren. And kind of a part B to this hot take is, where would he be if he stuck with Renault, now Alpine? He got 2 podiums for them in his second season after he'd already said that he was leaving the McLaren. That, he had a horrible start to 2019. And then, in 2020, he was like, cool, bye, I'm going to McLaren, before they even stepped foot in that car for a race. And then they raced and he had an incredible 2020. He was easily, like, I think, obviously in 2020, Sergio Perez, king of the midfield. And who was right there? Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo is right up there for top of the midfield. And his podium in Imola and at the Nürburgring in Germany were sensational. And it really makes me wonder, like, there's got to be something seriously wrong at Alpine if Daniel Ricciardo, after the performances that he gave in that car, and Fernando Alonso, after the performance that he's given in that car, were willing to jump ship.
Yeah.
But it's just the way that he is. He wanted to leave to McLaren. We saw it in Drive to Survive that, he was very open and honest about, he struggled adapting to that Renault. He really did. And he was like, it was between McLaren and Renault, and he chose Renault, and he regretted that decision. And I think the emotion of that, and still a little hangover from him leaving Red Bull, is what kind of influenced his decision to ultimately leave to go to McLaren, and it bit him in the butt. So his performances have not been worthy of staying in Formula One. I think he deserves to be in a reserve role, which we'll get to in a second. But I just, he in my eyes, he has not done enough to earn a spot on the grid, whether it's at Haas or Williams. I think there are better people to put in both of those places.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I'll talk about my hot take. George Russell. Let's talk about George Russell.
Which I hate doing this because he's a great guy.
I love George, but I have not been impressed with his racecraft this season. He has, and we should have seen this coming, because especially in 2021, but in 2020, and even in 2019, he was a very aggressive driver. And I know at Williams, I think that was a little bit like he kind of needed to be, just because, to get the results in that car, because it was not a good car. And he was trying to prove himself. He was absolutely trying to prove that, everyone knew that he'd be the next guy to Mercedes. And he was trying to prove to Mercedes, to himself, and to the world that, he belonged, to be at Mercedes, to partner Lewis Hamilton. But he still, this year, I just haven't been impressed with his racecraft. He's done a lot of damage to other drivers' races, and it kind of full display. Turn 1, locked up the brakes of his car and ran right into Carlos Sainz and ruined Carlos's race. And that's something that we've been seeing all season long, and even going back to Imola in last season, at the beginning of last season when we were racing in Imola,
And
I think
Imola in
that was
2020.
more of a more so of both drivers at fault, but but I I think he deserves that seat at Mercedes, but he has got to calm down, and he has got to be a lot more methodical with everything that he does, because he got lucky. That very well could have ruined his race by completely taking off his front wing, and then having to make a pit stop and whatever. But gosh, I just have not been impressed with his racing this year.
Yeah,
and
this is this is a public backtracking of us at the beginning of the season. We were all on the George Russell train,
Yes.
but I think that came from George Russell. We knew he was good. He was doing really well. The Mercedes was not nearly performing as well as it is right now. And Lewis Hamilton was not performing nearly as well as he is right now. Lewis Hamilton, it's like I came back from the summer break a completely different driver. He came back the Lewis Hamilton that we all know. And George Russell just has not had an answer to him. And then he does boneheaded things like that, and just, cold tires, dirty side of the grid. But that's not really an excuse, because you're one of 20 of the best drivers in the world. You should know. You have about 100 kilos of gasoline sitting behind you. Break early. Don't lock up. But I just feel bad for Carlos in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well,
I have a couple more. Just
okay.
I mentioned the FIA thing, and we've been on it pretty much all season, and I just I hope that the penalty with Fernando Alonso, but also Kevin Magnussen has had the black and orange flag thrown at him twice, and completely ruined his races because of damaged front wings and front wing end plates that have been knocked askew. And George Russell in the crash with Carlos Sainz had a knocked front end plate, and Sergio Perez with Alfa Romeo, can't remember if it was Valtteri Bottas or I think it was Zhou Guanyu, mixing it up in the middle and making some contact in sector 3 and knocked his front wing loose, and no black and orange flags for either of them. And so I just the regulations are there. I trust the regulations. I do not trust necessarily the implementation of them right now. And it's really hard to watch, because I want to have faith and I want to say, well, it's in the regulations, yada, yada, yada. But, it just is what it is. And my last hot take, and this is something that I've been very adamant about on social media, is we have to talk a little bit about a lot of the cheating stuff that has been thrown around at Red Bull. First of all, just because if Red Bull are found to have, cheated, which I don't think they have, but if they are found to have cheated, that's not Max Verstappen. That, that does not fall on Max Verstappen. That does not fall on Sergio Perez. That does not fall on either of them. The same Lewis Hamilton fans that are calling Max and Checo a cheater would have been defending Lewis Hamilton, in 2007 and the Spygate scandal. That he and Fernando had no idea what was going on, and they were literally stealing secrets from Ferrari.
Yeah.
And both of them claimed that they didn't know anything. And, that was that. And people will defend Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso in that regard, but in the same breath, call Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez cheaters. And I think that is wrong.
Because they have no say in what's going on.
And I think just in general, drivers should be left out of that conversation unless they are knowingly and willingly, having input in that situation, which they're not. You know, unless that's happening, drivers just in general should stay out of it because they don't know what's going on. They don't know what, is behind these decisions. They show up and they race. And I think it's incredibly wrong. I said it was incredibly wrong for people to call Lewis Hamilton a cheater in 2007. And I think it's wrong when people are calling Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez cheaters. But I think also those two things are different because McLaren clearly cheated in 2007 and Red Bull, yes, they overspent over the budget. We don't know as many rumors as there are floating around. We have no idea what has happened. What we do know is a part of, and this is what is kind of being debated and why there hasn't been any announcements so far. Part of that overspend figure that has been reached was how Red Bull reported sick leave for its factory employees, which in the regulations is said to be excluded from the reporting. And guess what the FIA included in their reporting?
Sick leave. Yeah.
Sick leave. We don't know how much that accounts to, but there is clearly discrepancies in everything. And exactly like Christian Horner has said this entire time, this discrepancy and discussion and around policy and regulation, that's natural because this is the first time this is regarding the 2021 season, which is the first season in which this cost cap has been actually regulated and punished.
Yeah.
So this is all a part of the learning process.
Yeah, it's natural. And the fact that they are having these conversations is actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to figure out, okay, what exactly do we need to continue to put in place? And things are constantly being retooled and reworked. I'm a teacher and so a music teacher at that. So like when I go into the classroom, everything that I'm doing, I'm constantly retooling and rethinking things. And when you're doing something for the first time, there's naturally going to be that progression. And so by one set of, and it all depends on how you set the metrics as well. By one set of metrics, they overspent. By another set of metrics, they didn't. So it really depends on how the FIA goes about, deciding this. But it's a good thing that they are having this conversation, and they're absolutely not cheaters. And, innocent until proven guilty. At least in America, that's how our legal system works. Innocent until proven guilty. And that's what they're going through. And I absolutely think that they're doing the right things. They're going about it by the proper channels. And until we, as the fans, know exactly what's happening, I don't think it's necessarily right for us to comment on whether or not they're cheating.
Looking at you, F1 Twitter.
Yeah, F1 Twitter. Gosh.
But yeah,
some of y'all are like my middle schoolers.
Yeah. So until we know, and on the other side of that, if they have been found to break the regulations, then they should be punished.
Yeah, they should absolutely be held accountable.
They should be held accountable. And I think and they should be held accountable. And I think the FIA should definitely be open to reworking the regulations in the future if they, need be. This is a trial run. They've never had the F1 has never had a cost cap. And so these things are going to happen. And so right now, I think it's completely wrong to call Red Bull cheaters. And, that's why they're also monitoring procedural breaches like Aston Martin and Williams, because that literally just defines how paperwork is filed, because these costs, monitoring the cost caps, it requires full financial audits of multi-million-dollar corporations. Like that takes a long time, and that's a lot of paperwork. So I don't get it. And, we don't know what we don't know. Now we are expecting some sort of announcement before the Mexican Grand Prix, which I think will be very welcome. And I hope, foolishly, because I know it's not going to happen.
We are filming this on Wednesday, and tomorrow being Thursday, being media day, they probably want to get it out before the cars hit the track on Friday. So probably we'll find out tomorrow. Yeah,
I hope so.
Hopefully.
And whatever it is, it is. And if Red Bull are found guilty, they should be punished. I don't know. We'll see. And I will say, I don't think that any of the team principals Toto Wolff, Zach Brown, anybody are doing Red Bull any favors by this.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been calling it dramatic. The thing that, Christian Horner mentioned, that, Red Bull employees kids are getting bullied at school because of their families working for Red Bull. And I think that 100% falls on the leadership of the other teams and the way that they're behaving.
Yeah,
And
like,
if
especially Toto and Zach with this whole calling, it's so childish. Like,
they're
that's
the
the stuff
ones
I deal with in my day job.
Yeah, they're the ones stoking the flames on that one, and I think that
Yeah.
is 100% a reflection of them. And to be completely honest, I know a lot of people are going to be saying that I'm a Mercedes hater for saying that, but I would be saying that no matter what it was, because it's childish and stupid.
Yeah.
So I feel for Red Bull in this situation that they're in. I won't feel for them if they break the regulations, because that's what they're there for. But we don't know what we don't know, and we'll find out hopefully this week.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome.
So I could go on and on about that. So let's move on.
Our last little segment that we'll talk about, we have a couple topics of some big news. I just posted about this on TikTok just this evening, but it has been confirmed in 2026, Alfa Romeo will be no more. It will then be the Audi F1 team. Sauber is going to become Audi in 2026, and that was announced this morning. I remember, it was this morning, because I remember I pulled up into the parking lot at school this morning, sipping on my coffee, opened Twitter, and then bam, there the announcement was. So really big news. I think it'll be cool.
I'm really excited. I feel bad for Sauber, the Sauber Corporation, but because they're purchasing Sauber, which is what Alfa Romeo is. Alfa Romeo it's not actual Alfa Romeo works team. It's their Sauber's title sponsor.
Yeah, it's Sauber Alfa Romeo.
So they're purchasing Sauber. I'm really hesitant though, because here I think it's going to be great, and it is going to be a full Audi works team. Like, they're purchasing everything. They're going to be making their power units in house. They're going to be making their chassis in house. They're going to be doing everything in house. So it is going to be a full Audi works team, which I'm really excited about, because growing up, a sports car racing fan, Audi was my favorite. And, we grew up watching sports car racing when Audi was dominating Le Mans in the early 2000s. And so I've always been an Audi fan. So I'm really excited to see how this goes.
Yeah.
I think, I really wish I could see Audi achieve the levels of success in the World Endurance Championship that they used to. But anyway, I'm just really skeptical, because these are the following results for Sauber from 2009 to 2021. P6, P8, P7, P6, P7, P10, P8, P10, P10, P8, 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 P9. And it's just like, they have one of the most technologically advanced facilities in Formula One. And their results have been what they have been. So I'm going to be really interested to see what it is. I think a lot of their results of late are a hangover from the financial difficulties that they experienced a few years ago. But I'm still just really curious as to, what this is what it's gonna be like for Audi. It's gonna be a long time, and they are going to have a long head start on getting all of this up to date. And you can bet that Audi is going to be following the sport very, very closely. What the chassis trends are, what the regulation trends are, what the power unit trends are. They're going to be following this very closely. And I think this is going to be, they have such a big lead time that I think they have a lot of potential here.
Yeah. I can foresee this going one of two ways. Either it will be a really, really great success, and Audi will very quickly become a welcome, really, really great team in the sport, very successful, or that will completely flop, and then they'll be out just like Virgin, HRT, and Lotus were after 3 years, after 2010, 11 and 12.
Yeah.
So who knows? What's some other big news you got for us, Chris?
Well, it was confirmed aptly in the American Grand Prix weekend that American F2 driver Logan Sargent will drive for Williams in 2023 if he has enough super license points after Abu Dhabi, which is the final round for Formula 2. Formula 2 does not race again until Abu Dhabi, and he is currently P3 in the standings. He is only 9 points ahead of P4, and he has to finish P4 or better in Abu Dhabi to get the 40 points that he needs on his super license to qualify for Formula 1. So if he just does what he's been doing pretty much all season, delivering really consistent top 5 results, he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be just fine. I think, there's nothing to worry about, but obviously they have to, they can't confirm him without him having super license. But, that is, this says 2 things. One, he's the number 1 for the job. That's who they want in the car. That's who they want to put in the car over Mick, over Nico Hulkenberg, over Daniel Ricciardo, over everybody. And so I think that that is just a huge vote of confidence in him from Williams. I think that is a show of faith in the Williams Development Academy that has been making a lot of headlines. And I think they have a really, really good stable of young drivers. So it's a vote of confidence in their driver academy. And I think they would not have announced that had they not, if they didn't think that Logan could get the points that he needed in Abu Dhabi. So I think that is them saying, we've seen enough. We want to put him in the car. We believe that he can do it. He did FP1 for them in Austin and, had a really respectable showing. And I think it's good. And ultimately it is going to be amazing. To see an American back on the grid for the first full-time driver since Scott Speed, first driver back on the grid since
Alexander Rossi.
He was not a full-time driver.
Oh, he wasn't?
He was not a full-time driver.
I thought he was, because I thought it was for both 14 and 15, or 15 and 16.
Before I eat my words, let's take a look at this. He was in F1 in 2000. It would have been 14 because of Jules Bianchi.
Alexander Rossi.
But Scott, going back even further, Scott Speed, he was in AlphaTauri for 2 years, and he was a part of an accelerated American Red Bull young driver program that they were specifically looking to recruit Americans, and just flopped. Had a great career in NASCAR, driving for the Red Bull team in NASCAR when that existed. But
I forgot about that.
I did honestly too.
Yeah, and the last World Drivers' Championship champion that was an American was Mario Andretti in 1978.
Yep.
And the other American to win a championship was Phil Hill. And that was 1961. So it'll be really, really cool for American fans, especially since America had the popularity of Formula One in America has boomed over the last couple of years. So it'll be really, really cool to see an American back in that seat. So I wish Logan all the best in that last race so we can see an American in Formula One.
Do I think he's going to be a world champion? No. So he's not going to be the next Mario Andretti, but no. I think it's going to be, especially
I think he could win a race.
If he's,
not with Williams, but
not with Williams. I don't know. I think it's too early to tell with him. Yeah. He's not been a perennial, he's not been a Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, where he's come up through the ranks, won in his rookie season and just gone through. But I think it's a big plus because he's a good driver. He can wheel that Formula 2 car around really nicely. And it's going to be huge for the American markets, especially considering next year we have 3 American races. I think it is going to be huge for the American market. I think it's going to be It's going to be great. So yeah, so Alexander Rossi did not compete full time at all in 2014 or 2015. He did one round in 2014. He did rounds 13, 14, 16, 17, 18 in 2015.
So yeah, the last full time was Scott Speed, 2006 and 2007.
Yes. Yep. That is correct. It was Will Steve in 2015. It was Will Stevens and Roberto Meri. I'm not saying that correctly at all. And then in 2014, driving for Marussia, he split it with it was Alexander Rossi, Jules Bianchi, and Max Chilton. Alexander Rossi did rounds 12 and 16.
Oh, that's right.
So anyway, yeah, I think it's going to be a big thing. One thing that I'm really upset about, and this is a long time coming. This was announced a couple weeks ago, but the W Series is no longer competing this season, and I'm super bummed about that. And I think that definitely hurts the credibility of Formula One.
Yeah,
because they not only are they not helping, they're just not helping the series. They're helping it in the most minimal way possible by making it a support series, but they're keeping it at arm's length. The women in the W Series, not allowed in the Formula One paddock. The W Series paddock is completely different from the Formula One paddock. They don't do anything. They don't get nearly the funding, or if any funding at all, from Formula One, the company, and the FIA at all. They just completely ignore the W Series. And I think with this whole We Race as One diversity push, it completely ruins the legitimacy of Formula One.
I did see somewhere, though, I don't know where this came from. I saw it. I mean, I saw it scrolling across Twitter, so who knows the validity of this. But I did see something that F1 is trying. I can't remember if I dreamt this or what.
I know what you're talking about. They're trying
to make it a full women's racing series that's on the level of F2 and F3. That is a direct path up to Formula One, unlike the W Series.
Yes, which they could have easily just made the W Series.
They could have just morphed the W Series into that. I don't know why they.
And I feel bad because that, even somebody like Jamie Chadwick, who's a 3-time W Series champion now, completely deserves a spot in F3. Even for all of the women in the sport, even all the way up to her, it completely severs their path to F1. And I just think that is so wrong. And it's a disservice to them. And, it is, and the only people that are to blame are the people at Formula One. And it is just really, really annoying and frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, last thing, Daniel Ricciardo. I said that we would mention it earlier, but Daniel Ricciardo, all but confirmed to have a reserve driver. Ted Kravitz said some cryptic things in his notebook that he would be, coming back. Daniel Ricciardo says that he's going to be around a lot. They believe it to be in a reserve role for either Mercedes or Red Bull, which would be really interesting if he went back to Red Bull. And I think either of them makes sense. I think he should do it. Because I think both teams are very well equipped to be able to help him develop and overcome the hurdles and reset from his McLaren days. So that's a big thing. I'm very happy for him, and I hope to see him back in the paddock next year.
Yeah, it was nice to see that he'll still be involved in Formula One next year. Even though he's not going to be a driver, he's in some sort of support role, but it'll be really nice to still know that he's still in the paddock.
Yep. So I think that probably will not be announced until after the season. But that just leaves the only thing left to determine is who's filling the Haas seat.
Yeah.
Is it going to be Mick? Is it going to be Giovinazzi? Is it going to be,
we don't know,
Nico Hülkenberg? I think it should be Mick, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
Giovinazzi, in his first FP1 back, crashed the car. He crashed a car that wasn't his.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? No. I think it should be Mick. I think he's more experienced. I think he's just the best person for that job.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I'm not just saying that because he's a Schumacher. I really believe that. So that's all I have.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is our episode for this week. So be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, subscribe on YouTube and TikTok. We're really trying to grow our TikTok page. We would love to get up over 1,000 followers, just so that way we can do like live events. We can do stuff on TikTok Live. So we would definitely want to be able to do stuff like that. But that is our episode. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you after the Mexican Formula One race, which is this weekend.
Bye, everybody.